fatalistic, that, if everything is the result of our karma, then there's nothing we can do about it. Things are going to happen because of our karma. So it's easy to get kind of discouraged and say, well, what choice do I have? It's all my karma. And that is precisely not the way to think about karma. And I'm going to try and show that. Um, Not so much from the Buddhist and Hindu traditions, but to recognize that perhaps Buddhism and Hinduism, along with several views that go along with them, but there are two contrasting ways of looking at karma. Um, I think the Hindu tradition is the more straightforward tradition. It pretty much accepts and embraces the idea of karma. And because it does, it then takes up the idea of rebirth or reincarnation. Uh, Basically, karma is a spiritual ultimate. It's called the all embracing law. A man becomes what he does. Um, the Hindu Upanishad says it's a mighty secret. The Sutta Nipata from Buddhism says it is a deep causal law. The word comes from the Sanskrit karman or kama in Pali. The root is kri, K-R-I, to do or to make. And doing or making is what karma does. It's the law of cause and effect. And I love to give. Most people think, well, that's the Eastern view. The Western view, Christianity doesn't accept that, and that's not really true. For its first few centuries, Christianity did accept it, and then I think it was 551 A.D. It thought, well, salvation and rebirth. That concept of rebirth really got kind of stuck, and they said, no, it's a heresy. But you can find it in the Bible all over. Karma, not necessarily rebirth, but karma. My favorite expression of karma really is by St. Paul, which he says in the book of Galatians, Brethren, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that should he reap. As you sow, so shall you reap. That's karma. That's pretty much the heart of it. And it's kind of interesting that the views in the East that accept karma, beginning with Hinduism, really look at the way in which karma is the eternal moral law, and at the same time, the idea of rebirth means that, well, if everything has a cause, then if we just look at our own birth and say, well, why was I born in the way that I was? And you can say, well, there's some karmic things in the womb and all this, but why that particular womb? Why that particular condition? Why that particular state? If you start asking about your own birth, why did you have the parents you did and the conditions that you do? Why were you born in a poor, suffering nation or a rich, uh, capitalistic system? I mean, why people are born in different states, different conditions, and all of it is because of their karma. And so that's the idea of rebirth, is that you can't get that much karma to get started, so to speak. You have to come with that level of karma. It's your karma to be born black, white, brown, poor, rich, uh, handicapped, um, to have tremendous suffering in various ways. Some of us had parents that were loving and kind. Some of us had parents who were loving and kind and didn't quite know what they were doing, uh, and caused us suffering because of that. And some of them were abusive. I mean, I have a number of friends that I just kind of cringe looking at the way in which they had to start the world. And it's easy to say, well, that's undeserved. That's not right. They didn't do anything to deserve it. And I guess the starting point of karma, and this is particularly true for my own tradition of Zen Buddhism, but only because that's the one I practice. It's true in all the other views that have Buddhism as well, is that you richly deserve that. What happens to you is because of your karma, your past karmas. Now, in Buddhism, you don't necessarily have to know that what that was. Maybe you're born blind because you in the past blinded someone or treated people in particular ways that somehow that all came together to result in that condition of suffering. Nevertheless, it's your karma of past lifetimes. Now, the Buddha said, don't try to figure out how that all works. That's not particularly what karma is about. What it really is about is accepting that. And that's basically half of karma. Accept that what has happened to you has happened because of your karma, and you deserve it completely. Then, from another side, what do you do going forward? Well, you don't look at the past. You don't look at what happened to you to put you in the conditions you're in. You're now in those conditions. And then anything you do will have an effect, will have a resulting thing happening from it. So you then have to live your life uh, to be the kind of life you want to, you want to deserve, that you basically choose. And so that's sort of the part of karma that works that way. Karma is a little bit like a seed. You plant an acorn, you get an oak. Um, and what's tricky about it, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but it's not just one directional. Oak becomes, or acorn becomes an oak. The causal relations of karma are incredibly complex. It not only involves that seed, but water, the sun, the earth, all kinds of conditions. Uh, a squirrel eats it. Well, that's that's the karma. No oak tree. Sorry, it doesn't work that way, unless the oak somehow goes through the squirrel. The acorn still survives enough to grow. I don't know. It basically is something that is multi interconnected. And of course, in Buddhism, that's the part that you really stress is this interconnection of everything. Um, but it basically says that cause is everywhere. And in Buddhism, you'd at least say nothing is unrelated karmically. Um, I just wanted to give a little bit of a view of the different traditions. Hinduism obviously has karma and rebirth. It also has enlightenment, and the Atman becomes the Brahman. That's another aspect of spiritual development. And the part to recognize there is that in spiritual development, karma relates to this world, the physical world. If you go to other spiritual states, karma works much more differently, and ultimately, karma doesn't exist. In moksha, the idea that the Atman and the Brahman are the same, that the soul and God unite, um, is not a karmic relation, it's an existential condition. I love Jainism because Jainism has almost a physical view, and it's easy to imagine. If you imagine your soul as kind of pure white, then the karma that you develop is like little pieces of sticky tar, and it sticks to your beautiful white soul, and it's heavy, and it weighs you down. And ultimately, in Jainism, you can't avoid that. You may sweep the ground to protect yourself from insects. Ahimsa is nonviolence, non-killing is their core view. But there are littler microbes that you will kill. You inevitably create this karma. And so that's how they have the suffering of the body, even on a bed of nails, where you can suffer enough to burn some of that karma off. It's a very literal view. And taking it metaphorically, you would be able to kind of stretch yourself away from that physical view and just say that karma works as a conditioning aspect. Um, Buddhism is a little trickier again because Buddhism doesn't have a permanent soul. So what reincarnates through birth to birth? And that's something that can be explained, and I'll maybe get into it a little bit. Um, Theosophy, basically, as Renée said, accepted the idea of birth and rebirth, and also that idea of enlightenment from yoga and Hinduism, um, the soul uniting with God. Um, I'm also going to refer to a modern Sikhism also has the view of karma and rebirth. It also has the idea of one God. So it takes from uh, Islam the idea there's one God. It takes from yoga and Hinduism the idea that there's birth and rebirth and karma. And so it puts those two together. And finally, a modern view that started actually a few generations ago in 1861, Radha Swami. And I'm going to refer to it has a series from 1851, a series of living masters, a guru tradition. And it very much has a very interesting way of looking at karma and rebirth. And I'm going to refer to several people in that tradition. Um, Madame Blavatsky said, the only decree of karma, an eternal and immutable degree, is absolute harmony in the world of matter as in the world of spirit. It is not karma that rewards and punishes, but it is we who reward and punish ourselves according to how we work with and through nature. Um, Karma doesn't create anything, nor does it design anything. It is man who plans and creates causes. Karma adjusts the effects. And so it's kind of interesting in Hinduism and also Radhaswami, you can say that Maya or Mara uh, is the doer of making sure karma goes forward. But from a real perspective, there's no choice there. Karma will inevitably result in certain kinds of conditions. And so even if you have a figure like Mara enforcing karma, karma itself just happens. You could say Mara is forced to follow the laws of karma. And so it's also a way of saying it's just the natural way the world is. Um, there's three ways of looking at karma, three types of karma. One is the karma that operates in this life. As you sow, so shall you reap. You lie to somebody, it's going to have repercussions. There will be consequences. You help somebody, there will be consequences. So that's the karma that works in this life. And then there's karma that we do. Perhaps we do something um, particularly good or particularly bad, and it's stored up for the future. In other words, we have karma that we're developing, and eventually it will be worked out, but perhaps not in this lifetime. Perhaps it will be the condition for the next lifetime. The Tibetans look at this very closely and say, at the moment of death, how your mind accepts death has a karmic link. And if you desire not to die, then karmically you will come back. And of course, you don't want to come back. You don't want to be reborn over and over and over again. You may be trying to break that cycle of rebirth. But if your feeling is, oh, I don't want to die, help me, you will come back. And again, in the Book of the Dead, it kind of shows you how you can calm your mind to the point where you actually have some control over that process. It's a particular way of looking at it. But how you basically respond at the moment of death affects the future. So then there's that second type of karma that is basically karma that will have consequences, but not in this lifetime, in a future lifetime. And then, of course, you have that, what Buddhism calls the alaya, the storehouse of karma. You are born with a bunch of karma. Some of that karma has worked itself out to give you the birth that you had and the conditions under which you had it and are working through this life. But a lot of it hasn't. And so you're carrying sort of a past karmas that either will uh, work out through this lifetime or possibly even future lifetimes. We have countless rebirths. As the Buddha said, I've been reborn countless times. I do not say this to confuse you. It's just the way it is. um, and in that sense, really, karma isn't good or bad. Karma just is. It's the stuff you do. And lying, you can say, well, that's not going to necessarily result in good karma. You kind of have to realize that part of the lesson of karma is living a good life as best you can. The Stoics, who were obviously Greek, but had a sense of this sense of karma, not so much of the rebirth side, but the karma side. Epictetus said, true instruction is this, to learn to wish that each thing should come to pass as it does. And how does it come to pass? As the disposer has disposed it. So as karma works out, be grateful. That means when you fall down the stairs and break your wrist, um, be thankful. That's the way it had to be. And you've worked off some karma, I assume. And of course, how your mind deals with it is how much karma you get going forward. I mean, it's a never ending thing. If you do accept it and do so gracefully, and many of us know people that are just incredibly graceful with the things that they experience, that's all to the good. That will have consequences as well. Um, Once karma is understood, there's no luck. There's no good luck, no bad luck. Um, it happens because it does. There's no wrathful God. I, the Lord thy God, will visit the iniquity to the third and fourth generations of those that hate you. That's not how karma works. It's not how Christianity works either. God is loving, but we have to experience this world. Radhakrishna says freedom and karma are two aspects of the same reality. You've got to accept karma, and then you become free. Then you are free to deal with it in a way that essentially has good consequences. So if you are complaining, say, why me? Why always me? Why do people treat me the way they treat me? Third time I've had a boyfriend that's betrayed me. Um, it's karma, and karma is not just past karma, but karma is basically the way in which you approach the world. There's a wonderful saying, and I don't even think it's one particular tradition. It's found in almost all traditions, but they say, sow a thought and you reap an act. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. Notice that you've done that all yourself. You have become your destiny is to have bad relations with men. It may have gone back to your parents, but it's also something that your character chooses people that maybe they remind you of your father in a particular way. Maybe you haven't broke through something, but it's still you. And that's where, a sense to say, well, karma is a law and one that can help me live. Um, there's a wonderful saying, and again, it doesn't come from any one tradition. It's found in the Bible, it's found everywhere. The idea of the mote and the beam. To say, oh, you complain about the mote in somebody else's eye. Your husband has this mote in his eye, and you forget the beam in your own. Um, the Dhammapada, which is from Buddhism, says the fault of others is easily perceived, but that of yourself is difficult to perceive. Confucianism has many examples where instead of looking to yourself, you blame the other person. I lost an archery contest because that person either was too good or cheated or whatever you want to say about it. If not for them, I would have taken first place. Confucius said, no, look at us, be thankful for the fact that somebody was better than you, and then try to figure out how you can be better yourself. That would be karma. That's the law of karma as the way, as the beloved ideal, as the path, as truth. ultimately as love. For love is the fulfilling of the law of karma. You can really look at those two as very connected. And that's where the connection of living in the world of karma, you can see where love will take you. In yoga and Hinduism and many other traditions, it will take you from the God out there to the God inside you. Brahma and Atman will become one. You don't really suffer because of your karma. You suffer because of how you relate to your karma. It's always that. Um, and I'm just going to give a little bit to end here with Radha Swami. Um, it had a number of living masters. Charan Singh lived from 1891 to 1990. He was a living master. And then Gurinder Singh he began in 1940 and to the present. And that means a lord or master of the soul. And he said about karma, Gurinder Singh, life does not make complete sense to us because we have no sense of the completeness of life. Mystics tend to describe, mystics like Radhaswami, describe realities in terms of two fundamental principles: the principle of love, the very stuff of existence, and the principle of justice, which is the law of cause and effect, or karma, that views and dyes the complex patterns of creation and creates the fabric of our life. So positive results tend to have positive results. Negative actions produce negative results. No action goes unanswered. Perfect justice, and therefore life is fair. I'll end with this statement by Master Charan Singh, again, the master before the current living master in Radhaswami. What I mean by we only get what we deserve is that whatever we have done in the past, we have sown certain seeds to deserve what we are getting now. We reap what we have sown in the past, and now we deserve it. Therefore, we should always do those actions of which we want to reap the desired results. Difficult as it is to imagine, life is fair. So that's, I think, enough to kind of get us started. Maybe we can respond to that idea. How fair do you see your life? And in the result of karma, does it help you to see it in that way, that basically your choice moving forward is to respond to the karma that you have created? Okay. Any questions or comments or anything that you would like a little bit more clarification on?
Well, thank you so much, Bob. That really was a great presentation from so many different directions. You gave us so many hooking points to hold on to. Like, we could make our way up any kind.
It's a very general topic. It's a way of looking at the world. And no matter what your religious tradition is, it's like it prepares the ground for you then to take those religious steps. We can talk about that a little bit if you want, but we're in this world for a reason. And this is very much particularly Radha Swami, but I think in all conditions, this is the world in which the Hindu would say it's the play of God. Why is God bothering to do this? Why isn't God just, you know, bringing us back to Him? I mean, why aren't we Brahman right now? Why do we have to go through this ego world? And that's part of the process. Is we are creating the conditions to be spiritual, or we're creating the conditions of great suffering, which is karma as well.
I was wondering if I could propose something to the group that from whatever tradition one might come, if we looked at life as a school, like a school for the entity, the soul, whatever we call that, that's going through it, then this whole idea of cause and effect and karma wouldn't it make more sense that the soul has to learn? So if we do something and we get the pushback from it, that allows the soul to learn one thing. If we do something on the other end and we get the pushback from that, the soul learns something else. And if one of the things that we do is actually self-sacrificial, that too is going to give us something else. Perhaps we have chosen to be blind in this lifetime. Maybe that serves some purpose that will allow us to relate to others better, or perhaps it allows us to enhance some other aspect of our life. Maybe we hear better. Anyway, this idea of
Diana, I think you had your hand up. I think you're muted though.
yeah, Robert had his hand up even before I started.
Go ahead, Robert. Yeah, Robert.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I just wondered, does karma teach you not to be attached to life?
To not be what?
Does karma teach you not to be attached to life?
It's kind of tricky, because life is where we are. And, if you think about it, I think karma really sort of assumes that we have a body. That's our material thing. And we easily see, you eat a bunch of sugar, you're going to get some diseases. I mean, the material world is very karmic. And then we have a mind. And the mental world is very karmic. But then we also have a spirit or a soul. And that's, I think, what Renee was alluding to, is that how do those things work together? Because the soul can be easily distracted by the mind. I mean, the mind, in that sense, the ego. Almost every religion of the ones that have karma really say you have to die to live. And die to live means, deal with that ego that is, deceiving you. And I think, as Robert says, well, what's the relations there? I think it's basically the soul learning how to deal with life, which is that ego, mind, body, and sort of experience of karma. You're going to experience all this stuff. How do you experience it? And that's kind of it. That's the nature of life. And life is the great stage. And we're all working through it. And the complexity of karma is there. Buddhism especially focuses on this, that essentially everything is affected by everything. Everything is everything. So that no matter how, Thich Nhat Hanh loves to sort of look at this sheet of paper as he holds it up, is related to the tree, is related to the sun, is related to the person who grew the tree, that chopped the tree, that paper milled the tree, that killed the spotted owls that were living next to the tree. I mean, there's just no end to the karma, some of which doesn't even relate to us anymore. I'm just using this piece of paper to write a note. But I can't ignore all those other aspects, or I can't ignore them. It's just that they're part of it. And I am part of it. I am still connected. That's what Thich Nhat Hanh wants to say spiritually, is interbeing, to accept that we're so interconnected. And karma, the law of karma, I think one big part of it is that interconnectedness, that interbeing. That's the part that Buddhism really picks up on.
Oh, thank you so much. And I really
There were a
want
couple other hands there. I think Diana had her hand up, and maybe.
thank you, Bob. I want to make sure that everybody here knows that you all know a lot about this topic of cause and effect. And so, we don't have to just solely depend on somebody who's called an expert, right? I mean, Bob is so wise on this. But guess what? You are too. Yeah.
Okay, Diana, that should give me a chance to say something really good.
Well, I don't know about that, but I want to thank you, Bob. You give the most interesting interconnectedness, and it feels very clear, and it brings up a lot. But I really liked what you sent out in the email of the laws of karma. And if you haven't read them, I really recommend you read them. And one of the things that I work with is the soul perspective. As you were saying, it's like it says on the bottom, karma is a lifestyle that promotes positive thinking and action. Karma is not meant to be a punishment. It's presented for the sake of education. And for me, God is love. And so people say, oh, you're being punished. I don't believe we're being punished. That's not how I feel about karma. I feel that we choose lessons, perhaps in the Bordeaux, or we choose our lessons that we want to learn to know how to love more, and we're given opportunities through karma or through our life experiences to open up in a soul perspective to deeper connection to all that is. And you said this, and I just want to. For me, it's been really important. Everyone wants to know, why did this happen? People that I work with, oh, I don't know why it happened. I said, we know maybe 10%. We may know the top of the iceberg, but we really don't know why this is happening. But what we can live is faith and trust and move forward. It's what we create with what happens and how we deal with it that's going to make a difference in our lives. And so for me, it's been I don't necessarily know why things are happening in my life the way they are, but if I can accept them and be aware that it just is, and then I have a choice of what I want to create with it. And people in some of the most dire situations have really beautiful faith and trust and soul, and others are just angry and act out. So I think it's really, how do we live that sense of love and trust, not only in ourselves, but in, for me, a higher being, that we are being guided and directed. It's not from punishment, it's for a learning experience. So that's what came up for me.
Right. And that really is the two big points of karma. As the Buddha said, you really don't need to know all of your past lifetimes. You may be interested in them. You may want to know if you were, an Egyptian princess or an Egyptian slave. I mean, that's going to carry a lot of karmic weight that you still are going to have. Your past lifetimes are part of that past karma, but you don't need to know that. As you say, you need to know how to balance what's happening to you right now. And you have the freedom to do that according to the law of karma. What are you going to do with it? Where do you go forward? And I love, there's an image that a recent comes out of Radha Swami again, of karma in this world is like a big department store. Imagine you're in a department store, and if you go to a certain section, you're going to be really involved with the karma of how you look, uh, makeup, and all this kind of stuff. If you go to another section, you're going to be very experienced, maybe friendship, other elements and everything. If you find a teacher or a guide, they can begin to bring you to the back of the store, because the law of karma is going to work in and all the stuff you have to deal with. But at the back of the store, there's an escalator. And if you can get there, and you probably can't get there by yourself, maybe you do need a teacher, the escalator will take you up spiritually to the next level. In some traditions, in theosophy, for example, it's called the astral plane. And then karma works differently up there. Your spiritual realities on the other levels are different, but that's another way of sort of combining the law of karma and the law of love, that you have different things that you can work on. In Buddhism, especially Zen, I think you're kind of locked in the department store. Sorry, this is what you get. And learning how that complexity of interconnectedness results in itself together is samadhi, or enlightenment. I love Buddhism because it has those extremes. Pure Land Buddhism believes that we've got so much karma, you just have to give up, and give up in a good way. I think what Diana is saying, how do you deal with it? Well, you give up so completely that you put yourself totally in the hands of God, because you can't do anything. And then, of course, God, in this case, Amida Buddha, will take you to the Pure Land. And that is the escalator ride a little bit by yourself, but you can't do it yourself. And so it's another way of looking at, karma can work itself out differently in spiritual traditions, in different spiritual traditions. Actually, I was hoping David might uh, say something about the yoga Hinduism tradition. I'm not going to really talk, or theosophy. I'm not really going to talk about those traditions too much that I haven't experienced. So, any of you that have experiences that use different language, um, very much it's a question of balance and love, as Diana was alluding to, but other things as well.
Well, I would pass that invitation off to Jade and Dishan at this point.
Mm. Good karmic direction.
There were a few. First of all, thank you so much, Bob, for sharing your wisdom from so many different traditions. And there are a few things that were popping in my head about how to approach this concept. And I think what I'm going to speak is more from a raw and authentic self without any sort of knowledge. So the way I see karma is how do we find our authentic and raw self? That is our genuine, pure self. In a way, what Renee was saying, that life is a school. And one of the biggest thing for us is to figure out what is our raw, authentic self without any makeup, without any this false hats that we wear in our roles in our lives. How can we layer those egos aside? And how do we find that self which is able to recognize the problem? Because the one who is able to recognize the problem is the one who will have the answer or the ability to find the solution. And I think the karma is kind of a pathway in that school, which will help you to find those hook points. Oh, I have this essential way of looking at things which only I can see, which means I'll have to be the one who will probably be able to find a path of making sure it's visible to everyone in a form of light. And there are a few ways which I feel you can find your authentic self is to first recognize what are the things you are attached to in life and see if you can practice, non-detachment. For example, if you are a person who loves food, find a way to spend a day without a meal. Just experience that detachment. Yeah. And if you are someone who loves, let's say, money, for example, or like increasing your net worth, find a way to give that money away for someone who comes to you to serve. Practice that non-detachment, and you will be able to find yourself as a vessel for becoming that channel to be able to let that energy, whatever the energy is, whether it's mental, emotional, financial, spiritual, you'll be able to serve that energy for people to rise up. And you're essentially, your karma dissolves and you allow that dharma to flow through you. So I think dharma is your highest karma. And I think the word is called as nishkarma, which is no karma in a way. But you can allow that dharma to flow through you.
Yeah.
So that's where I land for now.
Well, that's beautifully said. And there, I think you're connecting something very interesting. I mean, we're all here for a reason. Still in Moving Center draws people together who are meant to be drawn together. It's our karma to be here. And we all have that kind of, as you're mentioning, Dishan, the spiritual practice that we do. And as you practice that, you're really showing how your dharma is affected by your karma. And so each of those events, which is again karma working itself out, trying to do, as you're saying, to live non-dualistically, to be not attached to food or wealth or other things. And how you do that, there are just wonderful stories that explain the Dharma, the path of love, the path of balance. And we all experience that a little differently. And we have examples in our own life, and we have those examples that are there from our ancestors. One ancestor decided that he wanted to get rid of his wealth. And so he threw it all in a lake. And you're like, well, gee, he couldn't have given it to the poor. And most of you that know the story of Jesus and Judas, um, Jesus himself was a little bit taken aback by, he said, the poor will be with us always. We can't try to, that's not our job, is to deal with the poor. Our job is to become one with God. They might be related. Certainly compassion helps, but it's not the focus. And so you have to really work on that. And that Buddhist ancestor that threw everything in the lake said, I'm attached to it. I don't want to give it to somebody else so they can be attached to it. This is bad stuff. Get rid of it. That's the main point. And for him, that was spiritual practice. I think the rest of us could probably give it to charity and we'd be okay in our practice doing that too. But he really wanted to focus on that wealth, that capitalism, that stuff is not really good for us. And I think Radhaswami is very clear. For example, every chapter of every book of every saint they refer to, and they say they have a lot of saints other than the current masters. They have Sufi saints and others. All of them at some point have to talk about vegetarianism because, basically that food element, killing to survive, is creating karma. A carrot is life too. So you're still going to create karma, as the Jains are so wise to do. But it helps to kind of look at all that. And maybe vegetarianism is something that we accept, maybe not. But karma means everything is going to have a repercussion. And it's interesting how little food we actually need and how little flavor we have. But then if you really enjoy a particular meal, that's karma too. Deal with it. As Dishan said, that's part of it too. Be as dualistic and non-attached as you can be in this world where we're really interconnected with everything. So it's going to be a challenge.
You
And
think,
each rebirth gets better, hopefully.
Bob, do you think in the amount of time we have left, we could make it possible for everybody to add something?
Sure. Anyone.
Yeah. David?
I think this may be a little off topic, maybe, but Dishan took me there in terms of the notion of the core self. And I've been studying this more modern system called internal family systems, and there's this idea that there is a core self. There is that self that is non-attached, that is wise and peaceful. And the author of this system tried to make it easy for us all to sort of remember and to grasp. So he referred to the self as the core self. In yoga or Hindu, we might refer to it as the true nature. And he gave us ways, mnemonic ways to identify when we're in our core self. And I thought it's a very useful system because if you're not experiencing these 8 things that he identifies, then it's likely that you're off in one of these other domains that is attached or is what's the opposite of attachment? Aversion, right? So you know you're in yourself when you're calm, you're clear, you're compassionate, you're curious, you're confident, courageous, creative, and connected. And I really love how kind of simple it makes it to identify, yes, if I'm not feeling those, then it's likely that I'm spun off into some other domain that may not be serving or possibly creating more karma. If I could kind of weave it back into the conversation with that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Could you drop those, David, into the chat in case somebody wants to write all 8 of those C's down?
Okay, can do.
Mary?
Well, they're interesting seeds too, in the sense that just noting they are karmically played out as well. And so they're going to play out, even though it's your core self or your true home, you're still going to be, creating a character that has that much more balanced, calm those aspects that you have. And so you're dealing with karma more subtly, but still dealing with karma. So it's still there. The law still applies, but you are a little more free of it. The choice is bigger.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It really is an interesting topic. I just see so many correlations with my Catholicism and the other, world religions that you have presented. And the number one thing I feel is that we're all connected. Like you said, everything is connected. We're interrelated, and we all want to do the best that we can. And to quickly address what question that Marianne had about purgatory, my understanding of purgatory is that that is a place where people who have decided to accept God and not reject him. Hell is for people who have just rejected God's love, period. But purgatory is a place where it's a waiting place. And it's not as bleak as hell is. Hell is the non-existence of God. It's but purgatory, but I'm thinking, karma might be like purgatory, because if you're going to come back, you're going to do something to better yourself. You want to be a better person. Amen.
Thank you very much. Kathy? Let's see, you'll have to unmute that little left corner in the bottom.
Thank you, Bob, and everyone. I learned so much today. Not to question our karma, but to accept it. And I like Diana's response to it is to love and trust. And Deshawn mentioning non-attachment. Because now what do I do with this knowledge? How do I live my life and the choices I make? As Bob says, there's always consequences to every action. So be unattached as can be also. So I have a lot to absorb and try to incorporate in my daily choices. So thank you all.
It's interesting. You can say, the question isn't to be or not to be. The question is, how do you to be? That's kind of working through it. And heaven, hell, purgatory, limbo, all of those are the play of karma and rebirth in some ways. You still have to work through it in some regard. That's it's a little trickier how you get through that, but there is still some kind of spiritual process going on there, and the law of karma does apply.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go just the way I see people on my screen. I hope this is okay with people. I see Michael, and then Jade, and Carolyn, and Marianne. And then we'll see how much time we have after that. So you don't have to speak, but I'm just giving you the invitation in that order. Oh, I can't see behind her screen, but we have Sharani back there too. So Sharani, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. This is a very tricky topic for me. I don't really love the word karma. I prefer to look at it like cause and effect and this. Something that I love about the Christian tradition and the message of Christianity is that even though we have probably sown bad seeds and made mistakes and maybe hurt other people, God offers forgiveness, and through his grace and faith, we're able to have a fresh start. So I really love this idea that forgiveness and grace is a way out of this karma, or a different way to look at it. So the whole time I'm thinking of this is like, yeah, actions have consequences, but from the Christian tradition, if you ask for forgiveness, and God has the ability to give you that grace through the faith in it. So, yeah.
And I imagine there's something about what you do once you have that forgiveness moving forward. Yeah. So let's see, Michael.
These questions are deep and profound and are far beyond my feeble abilities. Perhaps I could share the words of someone much wiser than me. Let me read a bit. The spirit of existence is not merely a legislator and judge concerned to maintain a standard of legal justice, to dole out deterrents and sanctions, rewards and penalties, ferocious pains of hell, indulgent joys of paradise. He is the divine in the world, the master of a spiritual evolution and the growing Godhead in humanity. That Godhead grows, however slowly, beyond the dependence on the sanctions of pleasure and pain. Pain and pleasure govern our primary being, and in that primary scale, pain is nature's advertisement of things we should avoid, and pleasure lured to the things she would tempt us to pursue. These devices are first empirical tests for limited objects, but as I grow, I pass beyond their narrower uses. I have continually to disregard nature's original warnings and lures in order to get to a higher nature. I have to develop a nobler spiritual law of karma. Here we go. The self-effectuation of the spirit in the world is the truth on which we take our foundation. A great, long, self-weaving in time. Rebirth is the continuity of that self-effectuation in the individual, the persistence of the thread. Karma is the process, a force, a work of energy and consequence in the material world, an inner and an outer will, an action and mental, moral, dynamic consequence in the soul evolution of which the material world is a constant scene.
And who is that by, please?
This is by Sri Aurobindo.
Oh, Sri Aurobindo. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, amazing. Jade?
Mahalo nui loa, Bob and everyone. This was a really lovely presentation and a conversation. And thank you for allowing me to be a student and just learn from you and the different perspectives. And I love one thing you said, that just accept karma and be graceful and be great. How I interpret it is be grateful. In Qigong, we have a move is wise owl gazing back, and you have to look back at your past and be grateful for it to move forward. But also, you can look back at karma in a way and be grateful for it too, accepting and graceful. So, and also, after folks share, I would love to hear more about the law of karma and the law of love. You mentioned it briefly, and I think love is one of the energies and the superpowers that that is just really innate and strong, kind of how David was talking about the different energies. So I would love to hear more about how the law of karma and the law of love, how they interact, or your thoughts on that after folks share. Thank you.
Thank you, Jade. Carolyn.
We're taught that the line of karma is long and includes everything. Nothing escapes the impact of this great chain of cause and effect. And certainly we look at today's world and we see so much suffering and can wonder, well, why is it happening? But I think it's very hard to understand. I could probably sit down and make a list of causes of something like the Vietnam War. And there's a lot of causes. But if I look back to ancient China, I'm clueless. um, so if it's true that there are these great cycles of cause and effect, they're propelled by circular forces. But how do we go about trying to understand them? I suppose that's one of my big questions.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The law of karma essentially says the world in which we're born, and there were other worlds that were also very um, warlike, very divided, racially uh, discriminatory, slavery, various issues, and so many hard and bad things happen. But I think, as Jade said, to be grateful is to recognize that that's all your karma. You have put yourself in a condition of past karmas to be born right here now. And then you have to, I think, maybe before gratefulness, just acceptance of dealing with that. And I think I'll just, one thing, it's kind of response to Jade's idea of the law of love, but you could say that the one thing we all try for is that God is one. And our purpose in life is to become one with that oneness. And karma is the situation of how do we get to that? How do we find a teacher or find a path of spiritual practice that allows us to go on that law of love? The law of love being essentially which brings us back to a state of oneness. In Buddhism, that may be called emptiness, it may be called samadhi, it may be a little different than the other traditions, but it's still essentially a form of oneness. And we're trying for that. And this this day and age is not easy. I still watch the news too much and it drags me down and I have to deal with it. I wish that I could be karmically free of that, but my character doesn't allow for it. And uh, I learn lessons daily based on my suffering. And I'm going, well, that doesn't really take me any closer to my spiritual practice. And I don't want to go to meditation tonight, but I guess I will because I'm sitting in the Jisha seat, or I'm seating, I'm assigned to help in the leadership. Whatever takes me there, it's all going to be a play. And it's a play both of the disposer, the one that is putting the karma out there for you to experience all the stuff that's happening, whether it's Donald Trump or Barack Obama or George W. Bush. I mean, we all have our presidents that have affected us and give us certain kind of attitudes. But that's just the play of the world. We still have to then say, where is our path within that karma? And that's I think the tricky part. And it gets to Carolyn's main question is how do we do that? Well, I don't know, as gracefully as we can, as gratefully as we can, as um, effectively as we can. And hopefully, we've got some spiritual friends that give us guidance. You're all that for me. I mean, I hear your questions and your experiences, and that's helpful. I have a teacher that I love and have gained something from. Uh, I read a lot of books. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they probably get me way too much in my head, and I'm not, meditating and getting on that path of love. It's a struggle, and it's never ending. I mean, I assume, and all of these traditions say there is a final unity with that one that is complete. In Hinduism, it's called moksha, mukti. Uh, in Buddhism, it's called nirvana. It may be called different kinds of things and maybe experienced slightly differently, but breaking the chain of karma and rebirth is within those traditions something they want.
Thank you.
We want.
Mahatma Gandhi is someone you can look to for an idea about the law of love and the law of karma, by the way.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because Gandhi was very humble.
It's
You know, the humility was something that is part of that process too, of going, okay, I'm not perfect, but I'm perfectly willing to listen to you. That kind of idea of Gandhi is I think important too. And I'm aimed towards the truth. Satagiri, that's my path.
Well, our path next week going forward is to the topic of anger to patience. So we'd like our karmic path to lead us that way, I think. That would be a good direction for our karmic path. It's from anger to patience. And we have Z Riella giving us a presentation from the Plum Village Buddhist tradition for us to take that up. I think I'll go ahead and close, and then anybody who'd like to stay on, you're so welcome. And we can continue on the conversation. Thank you all so much. And particularly thanks to Bob. That was just multifaceted. I felt as if I was kind of being able to look through one of those little kaleidoscopes and get this super rich, beautiful view of karma from so many different perspectives. It's really lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah. So yeah, Kathy?
Yes, Diana mentioned an email that Bob sent about karma. Could I be sent that email?
It was sent by Still and Moving Center. So it gave you something, it was a kind of a long writing that came from a website. And sure, could you maybe send that back to Kathy again?
Yeah, it was on the one at the opening. It had some stones balanced on each other, and then it had a link, and then if you go all the way to the bottom, it was reprinted on that. So it should be there.
Oh, it's an email from Still and Moving Center.
Yeah, and I think if you just go deeper down a ways, you'll find it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Wasn't it the email that had the invite to this meeting?
I think so.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm forwarding that to you, Kathy. I see it was sent. Sometimes it goes to the spam, so I will check, the spam just in case it's there. But I'm gonna send it to you again.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Sometimes, Bob, I wish we had like an hour and a half. Because, there's just.
I know it's so related. I was thinking of spam as being really a form of karma too. We get the spam and the telemarketers that we deserve, and we have to deal with them as gracefully and gratefully as we can. I struggle with some of that too.
I was thinking I started thinking about Werner Erhard, one of his, I think he was a student of Alan Watts. I think that may be how this all ties back together. But he said that because there was a lot of conversation around understanding, like understanding karma, and he would say that understanding in life, understanding is the booby prize. It doesn't change the fact. It still is, and so understanding it, the fact is it still is. How are you going to work with it? I think is maybe the practical side of that idea.
Yeah. Well, last year, Renee had us look at 4 yogas of practice, and one was jnana, the path of knowledge, of understanding, the path of love or devotion, bhakti yoga, karma yoga dealt with action, especially as Gandhi sort of doing stuff out there in the world, leading nonviolence and things of that sort. And then the 4th yoga was Raja Yoga, which is Patanjali's positions of asanas and things. And all of those were meant to be paths of spiritual practice within the play of karma. And all of that, Radhaswami says, it dyes the fabric of the world. It shows the weave of it. And so the further you go along, the more you kind of proceed down that spiritual path that eventually is the law of love, and not just responding to karma, but actually taking yourself closer to the one, whatever that experience is called in your tradition. So those four yogas, I think, are very much related to the law of karma,
Actually, I
how
do
karma plays out.
that Raja Yoga is the kingly yoga. So it more would branch over the other three and also include the asana practice. So
yeah, I think actually all four of them include all four of them. Jnana yoga is knowledge, but knowledge of love and compassion, you can't separate that, out. And same with compassion. If you don't know what you're loving, you're going to be, probably not loving all that well.
true.
I give you good credit just for remembering that we had talks about that, because I can't remember breakfast.
Yeah, great mind. You are able to hold so much in your mind, Bob. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, as you say, I practice Jnana yoga. But it's interesting because your memory is filled up karmically as well. I mean, you can say you have past karma, but really, it's not like karma's out there waiting for you. You relate to it in your present mind through memory. And that means your past karma constantly changes as you change.
So
So yeah, you may have been
forget,
abused as a child. Yeah, but yeah, sorry.
if we forget, then we lose our karma.
I think even forgetting is going to have some karmic debt. Repression, suppression, all of that. And true forgetting. I mean, that may be fine too. But I think it's interesting. We may forget, and then we have dreams that realize that only one part of us forgot. It's a complicated situation, what the we is.
But to make it a little more serious, this idea that attachment is creating more karma, if we truly can let go and surrender, this is how we release karma.
I think, yeah, we release it in different ways. And we can release it, mentally, physically. I mean, there's our practices, our spiritual practice is what really relates to it. And certain experiences will deal with it. Um, yeah, I mean, when you have an illness, for example, the Buddha had a very painful illness at the end of his life. And he just said, well, that's one of those things that happen. He really released himself from the attachment to it, and he did suffer pain physically, but mentally and spiritually he let a lot of it go. And those are just, we all do it differently, so it's a tricky process.
That fool's errand, you might say, of trying to understand it is creating more of that karma. That's where the suffering comes from.
Yeah, and feelings too, our emotions are they have to be sort of accepted and worked through, and maybe just the pure experience of those emotions, sadness, meditating and breaking into tears, that probably released some karma. The fact that we can't cry is holding on to something. I mean, it'll happen to each of us a little differently, and it may be only one step of a long, long process of dealing with it. But it's joyful to find that you can experience certain kinds of things, and maybe forgiveness is another good example of that. And not just forgiving others, but forgiving yourself, forgiving, your attachment to it. Those are all. It's a long process.
If we forgive someone, does that help them relieve their karma?
One thing that I've seen about karma is that we don't affect others' karma. We may if they choose to be affected by it, but it's still their karma. It's 100% my karma. So I have to deal with it on that level. I don't know. I mean, I can forgive my brother, but then he's got his karma. And he
He's
may
got
accept it, he may not, that's him. And so you really don't want to kind of give it over to someone else, a teacher or whoever it is that you might feel can affect you and help you along the way. Karma is very much you dealing with your karma. It's yours. Own it, accept it, deal with it. That's how I see the law of karma. And we may hope that, it will affect other people in positive ways. And that trust is, I think, a good thing. I mean, and we may see it, and that may affect us as well. That's good. And it may not. One of the things that Buddhism really focuses on is that you can't affect the results. In other words, I may, recycle, I may do a lot of things for the environment, and it may not help. I can't affect what happens out there in the world. That will play out as it's meant to play out, as the disposer puts it. But I can affect what I do. I'll continue doing it. I'm going to continue to recycle no matter how much climate change keeps happening. I may choose not to travel as much. I may choose to lower my carbon footprint. And whether it does any good is not that important in the outer world. I mean, I think that's part of karma. Us trying to affect, and we'll only do it if it has an effect. I'll only forgive you if you forgive me. I'm not sure that works.
Could I make a point here, David?
Yeah, please. Good.
There's something about us learning the lesson of something that comes to us through karma that then allows us to transcend it. Even if we need to, on the physical plane, go through the certain suffering maybe that we have set up, that's not going to affect us the same way. Like when there was that story of Angulimala who followed the Buddha, and he was, terrible, did terrible things, stealing from people and taking their fingers and putting them around his neck, which is what that name means, is a necklace of fingers. Once he learned how terrible what he was doing actually was, and he decided to follow the path of the Buddha, who was absolutely fearless in front of him, where everybody else cowered and ran. Once he had committed himself to this path of love that the Buddha had offered as an alternative, he still had to receive the karma of what he had done. He still had to get, stoned by the villagers. I think he actually died from it eventually, but he had learned his lesson. And so he wasn't creating new karma by what he was doing. I think that's one thing, is the learning of the lesson helps us transcend it. And then also in regard to, if we forgive someone else, do we, relieve them of their karma? Maybe that's impossible, as Bob says. However, we are not heaping onto them the blame and the guilt that we could be heaping onto them, that might generate more karma of reaction on their part. At least we're holding back from doing that. We're offering this forgiveness instead. We're setting an example for them that may change their karma, in the sense of when they see that forgiveness on our part for something terrible that we might have done to them, that could, just like Angulimala started following the path of the Buddha, of that path of love, that could help to change their karma. The fact that we forgave them, rather than trying to take revenge. We see this in the courts all the time when, parents who had their children murdered forgive the murderer. And that somehow, can make a difference to that murderer, seeing that life doesn't have to be this dog-eat-dog world that they thought life was supposed to be. So those are some few thoughts.
Right. And I think, that really, this complexity of karma, as I was explaining in terms of interconnectivity, we are connected to all these things. And that means the karma is connected. And your karma is connected to me. I can't do anything about your karma necessarily, but I can do things that affect. I can forgive you for something you did, or I can do various actions. And your response is also one I'm going to respond to. And so, again, the process is a very tricky one. I can't control how you respond, but I then have to respond to you. If you're dealing with family, if you're dealing with friends, relatives, people in your country, half of which believe one way, half of which another way, half of which you agree with, half of which you don't, half of which you don't understand, all those things basically are karmic, and they'll sort of play out again. And so you have to look at it in terms of your karma, but your karma realizes that you're in the world of interbeing. You're relating to everyone. And what they do towards you, if it's anger, it'll affect you in one way. If it's kindness, they forgive you for something. And if that helps, that's really great. Hopefully it will. That's part of it as well.
Beautiful.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Bob.
You're welcome.
Yes, Bob, thank you. And thanks, Sharon, too. I got the email.
Okay, wonderful. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you, Renee, for this program.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care.